Sarah Wollaston, you were one of those who went to see the Prime Minister. She must have known you were probably going to vote against her. What did she say to you that changed everything?
Well, I think that she listened to our arguments, and I think they realised that there was a very strong possibility that the government might lose the vote, and that they have come forward themselves to assure us that there'll be an amendment laid in the Lords that will be acceptable to both sides. And I think that's a very positive development, because none of us want to rebel against the government. All of us would like to see the Prime Minister going into the next stage of the negotiations without a rebellion. And I think this is a very sensible compromise that it addresses the really key point here, and that is that we want to see Parliament having the power to stop a hard walk-away, no-deal Brexit.
So have you taken back control?
Well, I think that using this kind of language isn't terribly helpful, but what I would say is that we've received assurances from the Prime Minister that in the House of Lords there will be amendments that are acceptable to both sides, so I think that's a very positive way forward.
But in a nutshell, the MPs now have more of a veto than they've ever had at any point in this process.
That's right, but the difference is constitutionally, if we'd been in a position where Parliament was trying to conduct the negotiations, I think that would have been a very major constitutional shift and challenge. And that's why I think Dominic Grieve's amendment was very important. We accept the government's point of view that it still needs some tweaking, and we've accepted the Prime Minister's assurance that that amendment will now be put by the government in the House of Lords, and I think that's a very positive step forward.
Is a no deal in the Brexit negotiations, is that now dead?
Well, certainly, if by the end of November there hasn't been a deal reached, what it does is it reduces the risks of us crashing out with no deal at all. And of course, what we all want, and we're all sure that the Prime Minister wants, is to negotiate a very good, positive deal with Europe that's in all of our best interests. And we all want to see that happen. But what we're trying to avoid is a scenario where we crash out with no deal at all, because very many of us feel that that would have terrible consequences for individuals, for families and communities. And I don't think either Jacob or I do want to see that happen. And we're confident that the Prime Minister can achieve a good deal. But we just want to have that protection that we won't see a no-deal crash-out Brexit. And that's the assurance we wanted to hear today. And I'm very glad that we've had that from the Prime Minister.
Dr. Wollaston, thank you very much. Let me talk then to Jacob Rees Mogg. Jacob Rees Mogg, you too presumably now accept that a no-deal Brexit is dead.
Well, as it happens, I think Dominic Grieve's amendment made no deal more rather than less likely. And the reason for that is that the House of Commons, if it sets out indications as to how the government should negotiate, is a very inflexible body for doing that. And it can legislate for what the government asks for, but it can't legislate or pass motions for what the European Union will give. And that we have a separation of powers for a very good reason. That is because the government has flexibility and can act quickly. Parliament acts slowly, and time will be short by the end of November. And if we get into a position in November where there is not a deal that the House of Commons likes, and it sets down motions for what the government must do, if it asks for things that the EU then doesn't give, it will take too long for the government to be able to go back to Parliament, back to the EU, to get a deal. So I actually think this has gone the wrong way, because like Sarah, I'm in favour of having a deal. I think a deal that is good for us is the best outcome. But I still think that no deal is better than a bad deal, but that I think it is sensible to aim for a deal.
But Mr. Rees Mogg, you're a Democrat. The Prime Minister has surely operated in a very democratic way and handed power back to the representative democracy in which you serve.
No, the House of Commons has always had this power. That, I think, is the mistaken part of this bill. That the government, the executive, only serves as long as it maintains a majority in the House of Commons. And therefore, if the government is negotiating and the House of Commons does not approve of what the government is negotiating, then the government falls.
Let's cut to the chase. I mean, clearly the Prime Minister has sold one of you down the river. It's either Sarah Wollaston and her gang, if you like it, or you, and it's sounding tonight as if it's you.
I don't think that's right. I think that the constitutional position that the House of Commons controls the executive, because there is no executive without a majority in the House of Commons, remains as true tonight as it remained yesterday, and that the amendments proposed to this bill don't change that a bit. I think the mistake in this bill is the effort to add an inflexibility to our constitution, which actually will achieve the reverse of what the people proposing it aim for. And I think from their point of view, that is a mistake. But no, I don't think the Prime Minister has sold anyone down the river. I think she is very wisely trying to get agreement. And there's more agreement than you might think. I'm one of Sarah's greatest admirers and nominated her when she first stood to be chairman of the Health Select Committee, because I believe in parliamentarians holding the government to account, regardless of which party they come from.
Alas, I must cut you off there, Jacob Rees Mogg. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.